Welcome back, guys. Dr. Andrew here with Physio Room. I want to thank you guys for watching, if you did, the previous 4 videos that we've done as part of this running checklist series. Today we're going to go through number 5, okay? What this one is about is seeing if we can squat. So I can't tell you how many times that I have heard that squats are bad for your knees, squats are bad for your hips, runners shouldn't squat, we shouldn't squat with weight. Sort of all these things, like somehow the squat has become an exercise that previously was viewed as something that's very good for us, and now we shouldn't do it. So what I'm going to go through today is why squatting is important for you to do as a runner, and why being able to squat can make you a better runner. And then let me touch on one other thing that has come up. I've heard this a lot this week with patients, actually, is hearing that, you know, my glutes don't turn on. Or my glutes are not firing, okay? So we're going to go through a little trick or a little tweak how you can make sure that your glutes, in fact, are turning on, are firing. We just need to maybe teach you how to use them or teach you how to help yourself get those to fire a little bit easier, okay? So that's what we're going to do first before we go through the squat. Okay, so if you watch my feet, and we went through this on one of the past videos where you can watch the feet a little bit closer, but I have these white shoes on, hopefully you can see. So what we're going to do is a little trick here that we like to call screwing your feet into the ground. This is our way to generate torque or generate some rotation or twisting in the hip, okay? So if your feet were on dinner plates or on some sort of saucers, they would in fact rotate, okay? However, since our feet are going to be stuck into the ground, we're not going to let them move, they're not actually going to go anywhere. So stand with your feet about hip width apart. And what I want you to do, have a very slight bend in the knee, and I want you to screw or twist your feet into the ground, okay? So your right foot is moving in a clockwise direction, your left foot is moving in a counterclockwise direction. And when you do that, I want you to make sure you're keeping your large toe or your big toe on the ground. Don't let it lift up as part of you trying to screw your foot in. When you do that, if you guys are looking down, and you might be able to see this with me, when I screw my feet into the ground, my knees actually move outward just a little bit. My knees push out. And it's not because I'm working really hard to literally push my knee out to the side. What that's doing is it's causing my glute muscles on the side and back of my hip to pull, and the bone that they attach to right here on the outside of the femur, your greater trochanter, when those glutes pull, it creates this external rotation torque or direction in the thigh, okay, in the femur. So screw your feet into the ground. You should feel on the side of your hips, right behind your pockets, you should feel those glute muscles kick in and fire, right? And that's how we're making sure you can turn those glutes on. They work, you just got to know how to use them, okay? Now when we talk about squatting, one of the things we look at is that, like, can you squat? Can you push your knees out, not let them collapse in as you're coming down or as you're coming up from your squat? The other thing that we look at is, can you squat to an adequate depth? The reason I have the bench here behind me is because this bench positions me conveniently at like one of these 90-90 positions, right? 90 degrees at the hip, 90 degrees at the knee. And if I was doing what's pretty typical, sitting at a computer or doing some desk work, you know, this is a pretty comfortable, pretty good position to be in, and hopefully just not staying there too long. Okay, so, but when we squat, we need to go deeper than that. We need to make sure our hips are moving, our glutes are engaging, and our joints allow us to go further than that. And a lot of people tend to get stiff because we all spend a lot of time in those types of positions or sitting in the car. Okay, so what we're going to do is see if I can squat where my hips get below my knees, or the crease of my hip gets to a depth lower than the knees. So again, like I said, screw the feet into the ground, push the knees out, squat down. And can you get here comfortably? The reason I have my hands out in front of me is to help me just balance a little bit since I'm talking to you guys. But can you get here? Or are you feeling a little stiff and you can't quite get down far enough to get past that 90-degree angle? Okay, so just take a mental assessment of that. How did that feel? And now we're going to talk about, since we've got you on this video, the importance of hip flexion strength, okay? And I know this isn't on the checklist, but really important to mention that so many people come in and they spend a lot of time in those positions that we talked about, and they say that they're tight, right? They're tight in the hips. My hip flexors are tight or short. And that very well may be true, okay? So I'm not telling you that that's not true. my hip feels tight very often. But a lot of times when we actually assess or measure the length of somebody's hip, or can they extend their hip adequately, we find that that's true. They can. They have plenty of extension motion. But what they don't have is strength in the hip, okay? So we're going to go through a way that you can check if you have adequate hip flexor strength, because that's not a very common thing that we do, is strengthen our hip flexors, okay? We usually just use them to walk around, and then the exercises we do aren't for that. So what I'm going to do is take my hip. I guess I'll show you guys this way so it's on the close side. I'm going to take my hip and I'm going to flex it up. I'm going to pull my knee up towards my chest, right? So we want to see that you're able to get it above parallel, above 90 degrees, up to about 120 degrees of bend here in the hip. And if I let go, I should be able to hold this position with my hip up about 120 degrees or so for a minute. 60 seconds, 60 whole seconds, you guys, without letting this leg fall down because it's getting too tired or too shaky. Now, if you haven't done this, you're going to find out really quick that it's hard to do, okay? I didn't do it for 60 seconds, and there's a reason. I didn't want to get embarrassed on this video, right? But check that on each side. Check these things that we went through in the video today. Can you flex your hip up and hold it 120 degrees for 60 seconds? Can you squat to a depth where your hips get below your knees? And can you do that comfortably? Is it painful? Or do you just feel really stiff? And as you're doing that squat, are you screwing your feet into the ground? Are you driving the knees outward and avoiding letting them collapse in? And I didn't necessarily mention this at the beginning, but all of these tests here on the video would be good to do barefoot. I have on a pair of barefoot shoes that don't have a thick heel. There's no arch supports in them. I want to see what you guys can do in your feet rather than in particular shoes, because that's how you're actually moving natural, right? So again, I'm Dr. Andrew. Thank you for tuning into this video. Sorry it got a little bit long, but I really appreciate you guys taking the time to be on here, and stay tuned for more. Thanks so much.